So Kenshiro Teraji beats Carlos Canizales via a majority decision over 12 rounds. Now, I was not really surprised by the result of this fight or how it went. I expected this to be a very difficult fight for Kenshiro, but I expected him to probably get the stoppage somewhere in probably the championship rounds. But he wasn't even close to getting a stoppage in the championship rounds. He hurt him multiple times, but he himself was hurt multiple times, and he found himself outboxed in certain instances, particularly in the mid to late portion of the fight. But this was an incredible fight. Incredible fight. I mean, this is one of the best title fights I've seen in a long time. If this fight had happened a few weeks before last year, it would have been the runaway fight of the year, because this fight had everything. I mean, it was incredible. Both guys were knocked down. Both guys were hurt multiple times. Both guys showed, were making different adjustments throughout the fight. This fight was tactical. It was technical. There was a lot of skill involved. I mean, this fight had everything. There's a lot of people I'm seeing, and on Twitter or whatever, talking about people putting Kenshiro on pound for pound list. How could you say that? Like, I don't even know why you're thinking about that. I mean, this fight was fucking amazing. I don't even know why people are talking about, pound for pound list. This seriously hurts Kenshiro. Like, this man put on a classic. But I mean, all that aside, let's just get into the scoring of the fight. First round, I had Canizales winning. Not too much in the round. Kenshiro was typical Kenshiro. And one thing I have to say about Kenshiro, and something people don't realize, Kenshiro is not a tactical fighter. He's a person who doesn't go into the fight with any type of game plan. He's somebody who adapts to his opponent pretty much strictly and just does what he does, fights within his construct and his stance. But he's a guy who's going to adapt and do whatever he does and fight a free-flowing fight throughout, really regardless of the opponent. He's someone who works predominantly on conditioning. If you look at videos of the man on the punching bag when he's training, and I've heard this from people who've trained around him, he does not train for tactics, really. He's a guy who really just trains for his conditioning. He does road work, he does conditioning on the bag, and he does his sparring, and then he fights. Right? When he does his work on the bag, if you ever notice, he looks like a little girl when he's hitting the bag. He looks like a damn 4-year-old girl hitting the bag, because he really... he looks very clumsy hitting the bag, and he does it pretty much strictly for conditioning, just constantly, right? He's not really somebody who trains for tactics or anything of the sort, or works on specifics. He just kind of goes out there. He doesn't even do that much mitt work. He just goes out there and he just does his conditioning, does his sparring, busts people up with his jab, and just goes out there and fights and does whatever he does. But back to the scoring of the fight. First round, I gave it to Canizales. I thought he landed the cleaner shots. Kenshiro was pumping out his jab. Canizales was defensively responsible. Second round was kind of looking more the same way, except Kenshiro was landing a little bit more clean with his jab, and then he landed a short right hand, put Canizales down on the ground. And Canizales eventually reached in to take Kenshiro down with him. Which is kind of a dirty tactic. But Canizales was seriously hurt. He managed to see out the round. His legs really didn't recover. He came into the next round, he was getting kind of beat up, and then he caught Kenshiro himself. Kenshiro wasn't seriously hurt, but his hand did touch the canvas, and Canizales managed to get another shot in after he got up before the referee eventually broke him up and counted Kenshiro. But this was a 10-8 round in favor of Canizales, and then in the fourth round, I thought Kenshiro kind of took back control of the fight. He was outboxing Canizales, in my opinion. He was landing cleaner shots, working his body, landing some nice hooks. And Canizales, in my opinion, really after the fourth and fifth rounds, he started to lose his legs. He was starting to kind of move out around the ring, but Kenshiro was landing not too many body shots, but the body shots he was landing did definitely have significant effect. For the most part, Canizales was getting outworked, but Kenshiro's jab was the telling punch of the fight, as it usually is. He has a phenomenal jab. It is the best component of his game. He has one of the highest volume jabs in the entire sport of boxing. He's just constantly pumping it out, constantly trying to peck at his opponent, and it's just the foundation for the rest of his game. Once he opens up his opponent and tires them out from making them defend against his jab, picks their guard apart, then he starts working the body, then he starts working around his opponent. But Canizales kept it tight. I thought Kenshiro took over the fight from the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds, and I thought he was ahead 4 rounds to 2. But then Canizales adjusted. He started to turn it on a little bit late in rounds. He was catching Kenshiro with clean left hooks on the way in. He was timing him. He was standing a little bit more stationary, holding his ground, and he began to outbox him and also hurt him numerous times. Right, he was starting to hold his own a lot more in exchanges, but near the end of rounds, he would have these late rallies where he hurt Kenshiro, and he hurt him numerous times. He hurt him badly in the 7th round. He hurt him multiple times in the 7th round. Kenshiro came back in the middle of that round and actually momentarily stunned Canizales himself, and Canizales looked extremely tired, but he came right back and hurt Kenshiro again later on in the round, and in my opinion ended up having the edge. Hurt him again in the 8th round, ended up winning that round, and in the 9th and 10th rounds, he was outboxing Kenshiro. It seemed as though in the 10th round, Kenshiro had actually broken his right hand, and you'd understand why once you've watched the championship rounds of the fight. But Canizales was outboxing Kenshiro for much of the mid to late portion of the fight. He was just walking him into shots. Kenshiro lacks head movement. He can show good defensive flashes in terms of reacting to punches and slipping and dodging punches on the way in. But in general, he does not really move his head. He doesn't use any type of pre-slips for the most part. He relies a lot on his reach and his jab to kind of keep opponents at bay and then react to their punches once they've loaded up on shots. Canizales, though, was tired, and Kenshiro seemed to break his hand or hurt his right hand or something of the sort in the 10th round because he just stopped throwing it altogether. But I had Canizales ahead 6 rounds to 4 at the end of 10 rounds. So in the 11th and 10th rounds, Kenshiro changed his tactics up, and he just started spamming the jab. He was moving around on the outside, around the perimeter of the ring. Canizales was forced to stalk him, and maybe if Kenshiro had deployed those tactics earlier in the fight, Canizales might have been able to catch up with him. But another thing with Canizales is, honestly, his legs have weakened throughout the years. He's kind of past his prime as a fighter. His best years, in my view, were between probably 2016 and 2019, and after the Sho Kimura fight in China, in my view, his legs started to wane. He went on a 2-year layoff. He obviously lost to Bermudez on his comeback fight, but has picked up some good wins since then. He beat Mateon. He beat Ganigan Lopez. He's had some very good victories since then, but his legs are not quite the same. He doesn't have the ability to move around the ring constantly over the course of 12 rounds, with just an incredible engine like he used to. Still highly skillful, though, but he struggled to stalk down Kenshiro, and I thought his jab was the telling punch in the 11th round. 12th round was a swing round, but I just thought Kenshiro was a little bit more active and landed a little bit more clean shots with his jab. And, even though he was running around a lot in the round, I just thought Canizales was a slight step behind, didn't quite land as many clean shots as he did. And the power shots he did land came a little bit fewer and further between. I thought Canizales was the superior technician in this fight, but just in certain instances he lacked the motor, the youth, and the reflexes a lot of the time, and sometimes the volume to be able to keep up with Kenshiro. I thought he was the superior technician, a little bit more skillful and refined between the two fighters, but I thought Kenshiro's engine in certain instances and also his volume got him out of trouble in terms of scoring this fight and being able to pick it apart round by round, along with his athletic gifts. He is very gifted. He's got great hand speed. So he was able to just beat Canizales with a punch in a lot of instances. But I thought this was a very, very close fight. 6 rounds apiece. Could have went either way, and I would love to see a rematch between the two, but I've also heard Kenshiro struggling with the weight and might move up to 112 pounds. I think he might be a little bit better at that weight. I think his punch resistance might be better, and I also think he might be able to maintain pace throughout the course of a round a little bit more. There are certain instances in which he's definitely dropped his volume in certain rounds. Ola Squaga was able to, catch Kenshiro quite a bit late in certain rounds, and rally a little bit, and some people blame that as the reason why Canizales was able to rally late in rounds. If they're able to make a rematch, I hope they do. I would love to see it, but I wouldn't blame Kenshiro for moving up at this point. There's definitely some good fights out there for him at 112. He could fight the guy who beat Delakian on the card for a title there, Akui. I think that's a very winnable fight for him. There's obviously Bam Rodriguez. Bam would be the favorite in that fight, but I do think Kenshiro could pose some problems for him. Right, he is. People will write him off because of some of his defensive flaws and the fact that he got dropped in this fight. But he has similar attributes to guys like, Israel Gonzalez. He has similar attributes to him in the sense that, he's a guy who's very tall, he's rangy, he uses his jab a lot, he throws it in heavy volume, and Christian Gonzalez, similar attributes to him. And Kenshiro is a guy who's defensively a lot better when he's forced on the back foot, and he would definitely be on the retreat in that fight for the most part. I think his back foot tactics would show him being a little bit more defensively responsible. He'd still be getting hit because he does keep his chin up sometimes, and obviously he keeps his head on the center line, but I think his volume and jab would definitely pose a certain degree of issues for Bam in that fight. Right, and he wouldn't be as, he'd be a little bit stronger than Sonny Edwards and would also have the dimensions and the power to get his respect. So, I would love to see that fight. Even though I'd make Bam a little bit of a favorite, I still think stylistically that could be a great fight. Another thing people underestimate about Kenshiro, honestly, is the resume he's amassed at 108 pounds. This guy has been fighting nothing but killers since his loss against Ibuki. He avenged the loss straight afterwards. He unified against Kyoguchi in the fight afterwards. In the fight subsequent to that, he was supposed to fight Gonzalez in a 3-belt unification. Didn't fight him, fought an up-and-coming unproven prospect in Ola Squaga, knocked him out, dominated him. And Ola Squaga has gone on to beat former title challenger Guillermo Magrano since. Kenshiro afterwards went on to beat Heki Butler, who was a former unified champion in the division. Very good, very credible fighter. Coming off a victory against former champion Elwin Soto. And then, of course, he fights Canizales, who's been one of the more avoided fighters in the division throughout the years, and really could have been a unified champion himself. He was unlucky to not get the decision in his first title fight. He went on to win a regular title afterwards. But he was unfortunate not to get the decision against Ryoshi Taguchi, and he himself beat Sho Kimura very, very soundly when he fought him. He's a fantastic fighter, very, very skillful, but just unlucky to kind of be in the circumstances he's been in, having issues with his promoter, being inactive, the pandemic hitting, so on and so forth. Kenshiro has amassed a fantastic record, and that's not even including the fights before then against Milan Malindo, Pedro Guevara, and whatnot. This guy has fought some fantastic fighters. He's definitely going to go down as one of the best 108 pounders in the history of the sport. He's fought some fantastic fighters over the years. Oh, Ganigan Lopez as well. I mentioned that Canizales beat him. Kenshiro also beat Ganigan Lopez multiple times, stopping him in 2 in the second fight. So, excellent, fantastic. Anybody who hasn't seen this fight, I suggest you watch it. I have it downloaded onto my PC, so if you want it, I'll send it to you over on Twitter if you want to DM me or reach out to me any other type of way. Phenomenal fight. I'm not going to say it's, going to be a surefire fight of the year, because there could be better fights than this, but it would take a lot. So, fantastic fight. But let me know what you all think if you saw it. Have a good one.